But now's your chance to find out for yourself. Starting September the 12th through the 23rd at 7 p.m. each night at the Eden Fairgrounds, you can find out the truth about the Church of Christ. No collections or offerings will ever be taken, and your questions are always welcome. Don't believe the gossip. Only believe the gospel. We hope to see you there.
The views expressed on this program do not necessarily reflect the views of the station, its employees, or ownership.
Good evening, and thank you once again for tuning in for What Does the Bible Say? This is our normal broadcasting hour, Sunday nights at 9 p.m., but we have a special hour following this due to some mishaps with some of the program that we've had the past week with our tent meeting. So we're appreciative for the station here for working that out for us and allowing us to be on this evening. We're glad that you are tuning in. Our second week, beginning the second week of the tent meeting, and friends, as you saw with the commercial, we're advertising Sheriff Barber there in Danville. We haven't seen or heard from Sheriff Barber. I don't know if it's because we're outside of his jurisdiction. You know, out here in Eden, North Carolina, he may be thinking, well, somebody else is going to take care of it or take care of us. But friends, nobody else is going to take care of us, because what we are doing is we are proving beyond a shadow of a doubt what it is that your preachers actually believe and what they are actually saying behind closed doors. So many people are agitated, upset with us because we record people. I met a gentleman just the other day door knocking, and one of the things that he said to me, I can't remember exactly the context that was stated, but he wasn't happy. He thought it was ridiculous that we went around recording people. Listen, friends, with what I have tonight, if we were not recording, you probably would not believe what it is that we would tell you that your preachers are saying, especially when it has to come to or deal with the homosexual community. The homosexual community, to some degree, has almost become like an untouchable group. You do not talk about them lest, you know, you get slapped with some type of fine or some type of lawsuit like the bakery did out in California, Oregon, Wyoming, wherever it was, when they said they would not make a cake for a homosexual couple. But as was stated on the program the other evening, and I've got so many tabs up here, I'm trying to figure out where I'm going. We're the only ones that are going to be willing and, on top of that, able to actually handle this information. Dad on the program a couple nights ago discussing the buzz information that he had with back and forth there between, it was really a debate between Dad, Troy, and Charles. For whatever reason, Charles felt like he had to jump into it instead of keeping his position as moderator. You know, Dad was taking on two adversaries, which is fine. We're able, you know, we're up for the challenge. But why is it that nobody else is actually speaking out against this? Friends, could it very well be the case that your preachers are actually for, that they are actually using the same argumentation that the homosexuals are going to use against you when you try to go and teach them? You're a Bible believing, let's just say Baptist, for example, since we're dealing with First Baptist there in Martinsville. You're a Bible believing Baptist and you come across a homosexual and you're trying to teach them, you're trying to help them to come out of their homosexual lifestyle, leave that behind. And then you bring the homosexual to your preacher and you're saying, all right, preacher, tell him. And then the preacher ends up going against you. What are you going to do in that situation? Could that even be, I mean, is that even conceivable if that would actually take place? Well, friends, we're going to show tonight that, in fact, that can take place. The individuals over at First Baptist Church in Martinsville, Virginia, have already come out and said, out of the mouth of their former associate pastor, Mr. Daniel Wilson. Now, as we mentioned, he's gone, but this is coming from a conversation that I had with him over a year ago, January 2015, dealing with this newspaper article in the Martinsville Bulletin. How they're starting a new Bible study, and it's not, this new program isn't your typical Bible study, and that was because they were going to be enjoying craft beer after their Bible study. Now, the individuals here at the First Baptist Church in Martinsville, I believe he said it was one of the deacons, came to him and said, well, can we write a correction in the newspaper article and state that it's going to be either at your house or at a local pub or bar or tavern that's around town, so as to be able to at least distance it from the First Baptist Church here. And he stated to me that he was pretty conflicted about that, because if we're going to advertise it, that we're going to be doing this, and they wanted to say that didn't have anything to do with the Bible study, that was just friends getting together and having a drink. But ladies and gentlemen, I think that you're able to see the cat's already out of the bag here with the correction. We're wanting to have Bible study. After the Bible study, let's enjoy a cold one. Now, what are these people really going to be coming for? Are they really going to be coming to learn about what the Bible has to say, or are they going to be looking forward to what's coming to after? Well, this Bible study, I'm not really big on that, but I enjoy beer. So I think I can put up with, and I like Daniel Wilson. He's a good enough guy. I think I can put up listening just so I can get to what it is that I'm actually wanting. Now, friends, if they are already so moderate as they have stated, and we'll just go ahead and hear it from their own mouths here. As soon as I find what I'm looking for. Here we go. Windows Media. Let's pull that up so that we can hear the conversation that he and I had a year ago. Notice what he says here about himself, First Baptist Church there in Martinsville, Virginia. Now, even though he's gone, the establishment there at First Baptist in Martinsville still is in the same condition that it was when I was talking to him back in January 2015.
So do y'all have any affiliation with the First Baptist in Collinsville?
We are part of the same local Baptist association.
So the
that tends to spark some debate. The Henry County Baptists have historically been Southern Baptists, right by their building, which is just about across from the county building.
Right, yeah, I'm saying
that there. The sign still says that we're Southern Baptist Association. However, a number of the churches that would include us, Starling Avenue, Villa Heights, and Chatham, I might be missing a few there. But we're primarily, we identify ourselves as CBF churches, Quaker Baptist Fellowship churches, which is a little bit more on the moderate side of things. We identify ourselves as CBF churches, Quaker Baptist Fellowship churches, which is a little bit more on the moderate side of things. We identify ourselves as CBF churches, Quaker Baptist Fellowship churches, which is a little bit more on the moderate side of things. And so I know for us.
Now, what it is that he's actually stating here is that when he says we're a little bit more moderate, he's actually saying that we're a little bit more liberal. And when you say liberal, he's actually into the realm that, well, really, we're a little bit more unbiblical. We're a little bit more unscriptural with what it is, with the positions that we take. Now, are you aware that this is actually going on with some of the Baptist churches there in Martinsville? It could very well be going on with some of the Southern Baptist churches in your area. Here we are in Reedsville, North Carolina. We got the tent meeting going on in Eden, North Carolina. Is it the case that there are more and more of these Southern Baptist churches jumping ship from the convention and becoming this CBF, Federation of Baptist Churches? It reminds me of the Schoolfield Baptist Church in Danville, Virginia, when Mark and I went to go see him about the situation arising in the Southern Baptist Convention about speaking in tongues and the working of the miraculous. And we asked him, are you with the Southern Baptist Convention? He said, yes, we are. And we got on the subject of women preachers. And guess what? He sounded a whole lot like Daniel here. Now, what's going on? You got a infiltrator. You got a change agent coming in over there at Schoolfield Baptist Church. Well, I'm with the Southern Baptist Convention, but when you really start pressing me and you really start asking me about my opinions and what I believe, I'm kind of more with the CBF over here. And that I'm a little bit more moderate. I'm a little bit more liberal. And that I'm okay with women preachers. Daniel goes on to say he's fine with women preachers.
We have a historical connection to the Southern Baptist Church, but we have since distanced ourselves, and the convention has distanced themselves from us, particularly on the matter of women being ordained. We do ordain women, and it was at that point that we have had women pastors here.
So there you have it, right from his own mouth. Now, I am amazed, really, to a great degree, that the First Baptist Church is even still in existence over there. for people that would tell us, look, I was born a Baptist, raised a Baptist, and I'm going to die a Baptist. In Baptist churches, you do not have women preachers. And so I would be curious as to even the kind of, people asking us all the time, well, how many members y'all got over there at 823 Starling Avenue? I'd be curious to know how many members they actually have over there at First Baptist Church. If this is the route y'all are going. Y'all aren't Baptists anymore. You're trying your best to hold on to that name. And friends, like Caleb stated on the last program, why try to hold on to the Baptist name if you're getting away from what the Baptists actually believe? Why not just go ahead and change your name entirely? Well, because you just got some of those, folks still that when it comes to the name, they just got to hold on to that Baptist idea, that Baptist mentality. But really deep down, we're not really Baptist when push comes to shove. So it sounds like to me that you got a bunch of change agents going on in these churches. Schoolfield Baptist, the preacher over there saying, we got biblical examples supposedly of women preaching over men. Daniel Wilson, John Fulcher, Matthew Daltridge. They're fine with women preachers. Now, what's all of this leading to with our discussion about the homosexual agenda? Well, friends, it all has to do with authority of the scriptures. Ultimately, how is it that Daniel Wilson, former associate pastor there, and John Fulcher, let's get their pictures in here so that we're not just picking on Daniel from the past. Here's Mr. John, the head pastor there, reverend, according to the website. How is it that these individuals are able to implement these type of changes? Well, they just do away with biblical authority, which has to do with the book that Caleb showed on the last program. This is the then president of the Southern Baptist Convention, Authority, the Critical Issue for Southern Baptists. And he starts this in this book by saying, I believe the key issue among Southern Baptists, and for that matter, all Christian people today, is the matter of authority. And that's definitely right. When it comes to the matter of women preachers, we need to make sure that we're going to some position of authority, some rule, some law. Now, while the Southern Baptists are saying, look, we need some type of rule, some type of authority, some type of law, and they would say that law is in fact the Bible, God's holy word, I don't read about any Baptist church in the authority. Where do you get the authority for that? So you see, even there, they really do not even care about authority. Now, here's the other thing that we were showing, or that we were hoping to bring to your attention with these books. You've got people that are upset because we're recording them, and we're letting you know about their dirty laundry, if you will. But as Caleb stated, we've got their books, we've got their literature. That is them recording about their big fight, their big break that they had back in the 80s, I believe it was. So before you get mad at me and the Robertson gang and the members of the Church of Christ for recording our conversations, why don't you get rid of your past recordings? You got the Southern Baptists writing about their split with the CBF. You got the CBF writing their book, A Short History of the Cooperative Baptist Fellowship Movement. And what's it all about? It's all about them breaking away from the Southern Baptist Convention, throwing mud at the Southern Baptist Convention. You got the Southern Baptist Convention throwing mud at the CBF. But what are you doing on the other hand? Oh, we're all together. We still try to send them money. What? Why? If you're so opposed to them, why would you want to send them money so as to still be a part of their group? Well, there's just something about being part of the group. Well, friends, we're not wanting to be a part of this group. We're not wanting to have anything to do with this. We're not wanting to be with the CBF. We're not wanting to be with the Southern Baptist Convention. We are just wanting to be, like the Southern Baptist Convention said, we're wanting to be whatever the book says we need to be. And the book talks about the Church of Christ. So Religious Review, as you see here on our screen here, Religious Review, working in affiliation with What Does the Bible Say, went and spoke with Daniel Wilson, had a enjoyable conversation with him. An hour and 30 minutes, we talked in his office from all things, from inspiration to women preachers to the consumption of alcohol, which we discussed that on the past show. But tonight we want to deal with the issue of homosexuality. I want to show you a clip of a young man who is claiming to be a homosexual Christian, if there ever could be such a thing. I do not believe that there can be, according to what the scriptures say. But here's a young man claimed to be a homosexual Christian, and he goes around and he holds seminars, and he tries to present the biblical case in support of same-sex relationships. Now, I want to play this clip so you can hear some of the argumentation that he's actually coming up with.
Marriage equality is on the rise. But despite this trend, religious beliefs remain a major obstacle to acceptance. Many conservative Christians believe that the Bible condemns all same-sex relationships. That question drove my own intensive study of this issue when I came to terms with being gay, because both my parents and my church in Kansas believed that gay marriage was wrong. But what I learned when I studied the relevant scripture passages changed my parents' minds, along with the views of many other Christians in my life. There are 6 passages in the Bible that refer to same-sex behavior, 3 in the Old Testament and 3 in the New Testament. The most famous passage is the story of Sodom and Gomorrah. God sends 2 angels disguised as men into the city of Sodom, where the men of Sodom threaten to rape them. The angels blind the men, and God destroys the city. For centuries, this story was interpreted as God's judgment on same-sex relations. The only form of same-sex behavior described is a threatened gang rape. Ezekiel 16:49 sums up the story's focus on violence and hostility towards strangers. Now this was the sin of your sister Sodom. She and her daughters were arrogant, overfed, and unconcerned. They did not help the poor and needy. In Leviticus 18:22, male same-sex.
Now I want to stop it there. He's got more to say, but this is far enough. I would like to ask a question: where did he even have the idea to go to Ezekiel chapter 16 and to find that passage? Because most people today, when it comes to their Bible study, they don't know how to tack anything together. So I'm already kind of suspicious as to how he was actually able to put his information together. And I would actually think that, you know what, he had some help from a preacher. Some preacher actually gave him that information and gave him that argumentation. That in the situation with Sodom and Gomorrah, that it wasn't actually the homosexuality that caused the problem with Sodom and Gomorrah. But it was like what this individual is saying. And I saw that, but we don't even have the numbers up. Good evening, caller. And what's the Bible say? Hello?
Can you hear me?
I can hear you.
Hi, I had a question. I noticed that y'all use the 4 Gospels a lot. Matthew and Mark, Luke, John. Did you all know that those books are geared toward winning the souls of the Jews so that they could be the light to the Gentiles?
All right. Well, caller, I actually have a direction that I'm wanting to go, and I'm not wanting to deviate from it. But if you go
okay, what was that?
All right, hold on. If you go to the YouTube channel, I actually have a long series of information on the YouTube channel about the 4 Gospels. I had a gentleman call in from Texas, and we had a mini debate over it. So you can go and find that and let that hold you over until we can talk again. Okay.
What was the subject today?
Tonight we're dealing with how is it that this young man is getting his information that homosexuality is not condemned in the scriptures.
Oh, okay. I didn't know that was what y'all were talking about.
Okay, well that's fine, and I appreciate your call. I really do. And like I said, if you go to the YouTube channel and do some hunting about the Gospels need to be in the New Testament. Are you friends with any of us on Facebook?
No.
Okay. All right. Well, are you on Facebook?
Yes, I am. But I watch you guys sometimes, and I watch your father, and and I was just wondering, if the four gospels are geared to winning the Jews, why y'all use those to try to
Right. I understand what you're saying, but like I said, I have a topic that I'm on. If you send,
Okay. I understand. I'll go and check out that debate.
All right. Well, if you can find us on Facebook, send us a message and we'll send you a link. Okay.
Okay. Thank you.
All right. Thank you.
Bye.
All right. Bye-bye. All right. Appreciate that call. Kind of, and like I said, it's deviating, but we want to stay on this tonight. Here's a young man, and friends, I've done research on this gentleman. He has no biblical background in any biblical studies, which again, we've promoted that you do not need that. But again, I'm just so curious. How in the world could he have possibly come up with on his own what he attempted to show to us from Ezekiel? Let's do it again.
The poor and needy. Sorry. They did not help the poor.
Right, a little bit further.
Sin of your sister Sodom. Ezekiel 16:49 sums up the story's focus on violence and hostility towards strangers. Now this was the sin of your sister Sodom. She and her daughters were arrogant, overfed, and unconcerned. They did not help the poor and needy.
Now again, we're raising the question, where did he get that? I argue that he got it from some preacher. And the reason why I argue that, let's go to my conversation with Daniel Wilson again. Now you might be thinking to yourself, oh, there's no way, there is no possible way that a Baptist preacher over there at First Baptist in Martinsville would ever make such a claim.
Well, I definitely see what you're saying there, just as far as it being a trend. I believe that our current state of affairs with the homosexual movement, the transgender movement, a lot of people are just kind of jumping in on that because, okay, it's the newest trend. Which I would be interested to hear your take on viewpoint of scripture and, about that.
This is frustrating you, but I do think that it's a situation that is blown out of proportion. I do think. This is frustrating you, but I do think that it's a situation that is blown out of proportion. I do think that it's a situation that is blown out of proportion. I do think that it's a situation that is blown out of proportion. Okay, I think that Scripture's own attention to that issue is minimal. And even in Ezekiel, when we start to talk about the sins of Sodom, homosexuality isn't even mentioned. And the best you can do there is to maybe point at the other abominations that they committed as a reference to that. But Scripture's own attention to that issue is minimal. And even in Ezekiel, when we start to talk about the sins of Sodom, homosexuality isn't even mentioned. And the best you can do there is to maybe point at the other abominations that they committed.
Friends, Daniel Wilson just made the exact same argument that the other young man made who is a homosexual, and he's trying to find some type of peace between he and God so that he can stay a homosexual. Are you even aware that your Baptist preachers are thinking this way? I'm hoping that tonight that this is causing some great concern with you. Here you are in a nation, as was presented on the other show, we got LGBT. They've added Q on there, and we're promoting on these programs. We're heading very quickly to P, pedophilia. And you've already got some individuals involved in B. Pretty soon B is going to be up there, bestiality. I'm pretty sure it was in Elizabethan. Somebody shared an article from the Elizabethan Star of a man who was having relations with his dog. He was arrested. But if that's what, according to Troy's argument, if that's what makes him happy, then what's wrong with that? And where are our preachers standing up for the moral right, for morality and godliness? Where are they to defend us? Where are these pastors so as to defend the flock? Well, they actually have the same position that the homosexuals have. Now, see, friends, we're just proving any further as to the uselessness of your churches, of your organizations, because you are quickly, I mean, on a fast track to just completely doing away with biblical authority, wanting to become more moderate, more liberal, maybe even more progressive, and leaving the doctrines and the commandments of God to where sin is just able to go out and to abound. While the whole entire time you're sitting there and you're thinking to yourself, my preacher preaches straight from the Bible. But I've just played for you a preacher using the same argument that a homosexual is making for him to stay a homosexual. And this preacher, Daniel Wilson, is saying that we, who would be conservative, as if that's a bad thing, are blowing it all out of proportion. That the Bible itself does not even really give it's a minimal view according to the scripture. Which I would argue that in Ezekiel chapter 16, verse 49, and that reference to Sodom is not actually talking about the actual Sodom. I mean, your sister Sodom, I can't recall as to who Ezekiel was actually prophesying to, whether it was the northern kingdom or the southern kingdom, but either way, if he was in the southern kingdom, guess who their sister's going to be? The northern kingdom. So he's actually describing the northern kingdom, your sister, as Sodom. That's how bad, with their situation, that's how bad they were. God views, now notice this, friends, just because homosexuality is left out in that reference does not then mean that God is excusing that type of behavior. If anything, it's like what Jesus did in Matthew chapter 5. In Matthew chapter 5, you have Jesus describing what the Pharisees are teaching. The Pharisees teach you not to kill. All right? What does Jesus equate to being just as equal as killing, committing murder, being angry with your brother without cause? Because being angry, having hatred in your heart towards your brother, moves you to murder. The Pharisees said, do not commit adultery. But what did Jesus say? Jesus said, if you look upon a woman to lust after her in your heart, you've committed adultery already with her. So thus he's put lust and adultery on the same plane, because lust, not controlling your eyes, what does it do? It leads you to adultery. So when you have Ezekiel writing there in Ezekiel chapter 16, it's not at all what Daniel Wilson and the other young man are saying. That, it's left out, and what God was actually upset with was their arrogance, and they were fat, and they weren't being kind to the poor. No, if anything, he is putting those sins on the same plane as homosexuality. It has nothing to do with having anything left out or any one being more important than the other. I mean, if you're going to do that, and you're going to say, well, it's not in this account, so therefore it wasn't talked about in the other. Then when you have the different gospel accounts, since the gospel accounts got brought up, in John's account of Jesus living on this earth, he is the only one, I believe, that has any reference to the washing of their feet. All right, so if I read Matthew, Mark, and Luke's account, there is no reference to the washing of feet, so that means it didn't happen. And it wasn't important. No, friends, that's not how the Bible works. The Bible presents information in different areas, and with the different areas, it gives more information. It gives more detail. It's not a contradiction. It's just simply the giving of more detail. One that John Fulcher brought up in his Bible classes when we got to the book of Malachi dealing with divorce, he tried to bring up in Matthew chapter 19 the fact that Jesus gives the exception that except to be for fornication, if you marry another, you commit adultery. And then he tried to bring up Mark's account, how that Mark doesn't have the exception. And so he actually tried to say that, well, Matthew has the exception, Mark doesn't have the exception, so what are we supposed to do here? What are we supposed to believe? Hello? If you want the exception to the rule, you go to Matthew's account, and it's just as binding in Mark's account as it is in Matthew. But you see what these guys are doing, what the moderate position is actually doing? The moderate position is actually trying to present the Bible as though it's undone. Now, you don't think that's the case? Let's go back to my conversation with Daniel Wilson. Let's hear what he has to say about the Scriptures.
Let it suffice to say that I do think that the Scriptures leave us with unfinished business. Let it suffice to say that I do think that the Scriptures leave us with unfinished business. My view is that in 2,000 years of history, we continue to follow those trajectories into uncharted territory. Namely, things that the cultures which gave rise to the Scriptures did not anticipate. Namely, things that the cultures which gave rise to the Scriptures did not anticipate. Namely, things that the cultures which gave rise to the Scriptures did not anticipate.
So the Scriptures actually leave us with unfinished business, and that in looking into the future, that the Scriptures were not able to foresee and not able to deal with the situations that were going to arise in society. Now, friends, I don't know what kind of God they're serving over at the First Baptist Church, but it's not the God that I read about in the Bible. The God that I read about in the Bible has eyes that are running to and fro, eyes that are discerning, that are watching over the affairs of man, that are able to view, that are able to look down through the annals of time and be able to see what's going to happen in the future. That's the God I read about in the Bible. What's going on? What's going on over here? You claim over at First Baptist Church in Martinsville to be following the God of the Bible, but yet everything that you're saying, everything that's being presented from your preacher's mouth does not add up with what the Scriptures actually say. Now, friends, the question then has to be asked, what are you going to do about this? They've already kicked us out. They kicked me and Caleb out of their Bible study. At this point, there's not a whole lot we can do unless we run into them out in the community or something, and start trying to talk to them. Then call them on the phone, maybe write them emails. But what are you going to do as the member who's in this place, who's trying your best to do what God says to do, but then you got your own preachers and they're undermining what it is that you're trying to do? No wonder when Caleb brought his what's it called, his petition. No wonder when Caleb brought in his petition to boycott Target, that only one person in that Bible study signed it. Now, you would think that if that room were filled with Bible-believing Christians about what the Bible has to actually say about homosexuality, that they would be as frustrated. And the reason why Caleb did is because there was a lady in there in the previous study who was frustrated, and she let her frustrations out. And she ended up asking the question, what are we supposed to do about it? Well, how about we start doing like the homosexuals have done? What if we start speaking out? What if we start shouting louder than they do? And friends, that's really what it all boils down to. We start shaming these people enough, then we'll end up putting them back, really in the closet, back where they belong. They do not belong out in normal society with the rest of us. That's not helping us one bit. It's causing more problems. It's disrupting our peace, because now we have to watch out for these perverts that are running around town. And if it was not bad enough that you got Daniel Wilson making arguments for the homosexual. Now, friends, that's really the ridiculous part about it. Here we are on this program, and we're trying to teach from the Bible that homosexuality is a sin, but then we've got your Baptist preacher coming behind us and undercutting our efforts from where? Supposedly from the Bible. Now, friends, if I were in a Baptist church at this point, I would be scared to death. What's my preacher saying behind closed doors? What are his actual convictions? What is it that he actually believes? Does he actually believe that homosexuality is a sin? Or is he like just the rest of the community that's just going along to get along, becoming more moderate, becoming more liberal? Now, here's the next step that I would like to do. I would like to actually put First Baptist Church in opposition to a church in Danville, Virginia. Now, it's not a Baptist church, but, really, when you ask them, that doesn't matter. Jackie Post says Baptist, Methodist, Apostolic, Church of God in Christ, whatever they are, as long as they believe in the name of Jesus Christ, they're saved people in those churches. So even though this church that I'm about to play you some information from their leader, and to be more specific, from their apostle, even though he's not in the Baptist church, they would say, oh, we're in fellowship with them. Oh, really? He doesn't take your same position on homosexuality that you do.
Is this Apostle Campbell? Yes, sir. This is Micah. I came to see you on Wednesday concerning a DVD that I left you. I was wondering if you were able to watch it, and if you.
No, I have not had an opportunity to look at it. No.
Okay.
I have not.
All right. Well, okay. That's all I was wanting to know. Because was hoping to get your feelings on what Jessica and Mr. Bennett said. And
Well, as I told you, I don't know what they said, but as far as homosexuality is concerned, it's wrong. It's a sin. It's wrong. It's a sin. It's wrong. It's a sin. And I don't have anything to say. The Bible speaks for itself.
okay, but and
The Bible speaks for itself. Now, I do not have a whole lot to agree with Mr. Lawrence Campbell on, but I can agree with him on that. It's just what the Bible says. And I find it interesting that while the homosexual community are trying to make it a civil movement, here's somebody who was actually involved in fighting for civil rights, and he's not willing to give them that. I believe that he understands, look, this has nothing to do like with what the black community had to deal with the South and their Jim Crow laws and everything such as that. That he, at least on this occasion, is willing to stand with what the Bible says and say that it's a sin. But I still have to wonder, I still have to question within myself, would he have said that if we were in mixed company? You see, I've got him on the phone. He doesn't know that I'm recording him, which, I think that he would know, considering that he knew who we were. So I call him back saying, I'm Micah Robertson with Religious Review. Came and saw you the other day. I'm pretty sure he was aware we were recording then. So maybe it is the case that he would say that out in the open. I don't know. I would hope so. But you may be asking yourself, well, what information were you taking for him to see? Well, I'm glad you asked that question. And this may actually end up causing more questions to end up being asked.
I'll tell you really fast. Okay. That is one church in Danville that welcomed everybody. And I remember going there as a kid and now that welcomed interracial couples. And that was Bible Way Worldwide.
Okay, Apostle Campbell.
Apostle Campbell would welcome everybody. He didn't care about
Well, at the time it was Bishop Calvert, Christ Temple.
Yeah.
I want to give him
He preached love and understanding.
Well, and
that's why I love that.
Bishop.
Now, here's a homosexual, and he's talking about interracial, but yes, he put that into the capsule of everybody. Everybody's welcome. He says that he goes there. Now, you see, that's what causes questions to be raised in my mind about what so-called Apostle Campbell ends up saying about homosexuality. If he really takes that stand about homosexuality, then how can Mr. Bennett here feel comfortable over there. I'm kind of feeling a disconnect here. What's going on in your churches? You see, your preachers are not willing to touch this. They're not willing to handle this. Now, is this to say that homosexuals are not welcome at the Church of Christ? No, we're not saying that. Homosexuals are welcome at the Church of Christ. But guess what? We're going to be teaching them you need to get out of that, because the Bible teaches that. Contrary to what the young man said on the clip just a moment ago, contrary to what Daniel Wilson said in the conversation that I had with him over a year ago, the Bible is very clear about homosexuality, not just homosexuality, but even being effeminate. To put it in a street term, just being a sissy. Notice this in 1 Corinthians chapter 6 and verse 9. Know ye not that the unrighteous shall not inherit the kingdom of God? That's here on earth. You're not going to be a member of the church, member of the kingdom, and you're not going to inherit the kingdom of God when we make it up to heaven. Be not deceived, neither fornicators, nor idolaters, nor adulterers, nor effeminate, nor abusers of themselves with mankind. Now, friends, again, like we stated with Ezekiel chapter 16, verse 49, we're not wanting to put any sin above another. We've had some individuals try to call in and say, we're talking all the time about homosexuality. What about adultery? Friends, we preach against adultery. We tell men that they should not leave their wives for another woman. We tell women they should not leave their husbands for another man. That they made a commitment to each other. They need to honor that commitment if they want to be in right standing with God. But tonight we're dealing with homosexuality because nobody else is wanting to touch it. Nobody else wants to deal with Troy. Nobody else wants to handle Troy. And I think part of the reason why they do not want to handle Troy is not necessarily because of his homosexuality, but because of the questions that he likes to raise about where did God come from. Now, you know for sure that a Baptist out here, look, friends, if the Baptist cannot even get homosexuality right, that it's a sin, do you think they're going to be able to answer about where did God come from? You think they're really going to deal with a deep subject like that? How do you explain an eternal being? No, they're not even going to get anywhere near that. So they kind of push Troy to the side, and they don't want to deal with him. But let's notice this word effeminate. It comes from the Greek word malakos. Malakos of a certain affinity. It carries the idea of being soft. Dealing with clothing can be used in talking about clothes. But it also has to deal with effeminate there in the King James Bible Companion, effeminate, acting like a woman, being unmanly. Even breaking it down in the New Englishman's Greek Concordance and Lexicon, Wigram and Green, by Wigram and Green, malakos, effeminate, and notice this, in their Concordance and Lexicon, in parentheses, specifically as homosexual males. 1 Corinthians chapter 6 and verse 9. The Bible says just being effeminate, having the attitude and the tendency of being womanly, and having the affinity towards men is sinful. Now, I find that interesting, considering the fact that you have some of our brethren in the Lord's church promoting in a very, very vague way that you can be homosexual as long as you're not practicing. Now, I find that difficult to believe with what we just read here about not even being effeminate. No, you can't even be homosexual. Now, if you have a hard time believing that, just go look up the Fried-Hardeman lectures in 2012. You got Ralph Gilmore up there saying that he believes that a person can be a homosexual just not practicing. That you need to stop the practice of homosexuality. I don't read the word practice in here. It says, nor effeminate, nor abuse of themselves with mankind. There's the attitude, there's the disposition, and there's the action. But yet, it's become one of those topics where we got to be more moderate. Even our own brethren are saying we got to be more progressive. We got to be more understanding, got to be more compassionate. Look, friends, I understand about being compassionate, and the compassionate thing to do for somebody is to teach them about this. Instead of trying to lovey-dovey them, tell them what they need to hear. Now, I'm not saying you have to get gruff with them or get agitated or irritated with them, but just simply tell them what the Bible has to say and then just leave it at that. Now, even when we get outside of biblical definitions, let's look at Webster's. How does our common vernacular use the word effeminate? The softness, delicacy, and weakness in men. So even here, this term can be used in a broader sense, in which, now that I'm looking at, I just added the New Englishman's Greek Concordance and Lexicon in dealing with this Greek word, and I'm using a PowerPoint from a previous slideshow, and the fact that they use effeminate in the Greek and specifically as homosexual males, I'm not even sure that our English even compares to what the power of the Greek actually has in dealing with the idea of being effeminate. But yet we've got people, Daniel Wilson, First Baptist Church there in Martinsville, Virginia. This young man, as I showed here, and I wish I could remember his name. I think his name is Matthew. I don't think it's actually on the clip. No, it's not on the clip, but I believe his name is Matthew. Got Daniel Wilson, Matthew, making these arguments from scriptures, poor arguments from scriptures, so as to alleviate some of the pain that comes with being a homosexual. Now, it's very interesting that they are trying to alleviate that pain, because when you get to Romans chapter 1, in Romans chapter 1, you have Paul in a discussion there with the Jews about the Gentiles, and he gets discussing about some of the debauchery and the sinful behaviors and the attitudes that they have, so as to lead up to his discussion with the Jews and the problems that they're involved in. Notice here what he discusses. And we've discussed this before, how they were foolish in their own understanding, professing themselves to be wise, changing the truth of God into a lie. Verse 26, for this cause God gave them up unto vile affections, for even their women did change the natural use into that which is against nature. And likewise also the men, leaving the natural use of the woman, burned in their lust one toward another, men with men working that which is unseemly, and receiving in themselves the recompense of their error, which was meat. The word vile affections. Affections is pathos. And pathos is only used 3 other times in the New Testament. But it comes from another word. It's from the word, in the Strong's, the number is 3958. And that word primarily has to deal with the idea of something that is, it's centered around suffering, it's centered around pain. So these vile affections that they are in, when they're turning the natural use of the woman from that, or an unnatural use to that, a natural use into that which is unnatural, and using the phrase that it is a vile affection, carries within it that this is just something that is within itself, not a loving relationship, but it is a relationship that comes from and causes a great deal of suffering and a great deal of pain. Now, I find it interesting how that, with the discussion that Dad had with Troy on the buzz, that he was not willing to let out as to how old his new hubby is.
Age doesn't matter.
Well, they say age doesn't matter, but when you talk to people that are in the homosexual community, they tell you that the older homosexual men prey on the younger homosexual men. They're predators. Much like the Catholic priests. The Catholic priests have little boys coming into their parsonage, or not the parsonages, but the schools and different things that they're involved in. They don't have a daddy most of the time. The mama's not around, have no home life, nobody to turn to. And so what did the priests end up doing in the Catholic Church when all those problems were going on? Still going on. They're taking advantage of these poor children. You talk to young men that were in this lifestyle and they will tell you, look, my parents didn't care about me. I was skipping school and I came across this individual and he just started helping me out. Buying me clothes, buying me food. And next thing you know, we're doing things I never thought we were going to be doing. Why is that? They're predators. Talking about they're just wanting a monogamous lifestyle? No, that's not what you're wanting. You're wanting to take advantage. You're wanting to cause pain and suffering, vile affections on another person's life. Now, I bring that up because in the clip with the young man who tries to use Ezekiel chapter 16, verse 49, he goes to Romans chapter 1, verse 19, and he tries to say, well, Paul in his description here doesn't even mention anything about a loving relationship. It's all centered around lust. And the reason why you do not have Paul mentioning anything about a loving relationship because there's nothing loving about a homosexual relationship. The entire relationship, according to God, is vile. The other times that you have these vile affections being referenced, I believe the other one is in Colossians chapter 3 and verse 5. Mortify therefore your members which are upon the earth, fornication, uncleanness, inordinate affection, evil concupiscence, and covetousness, which is idolatry. Notice, friends, there's not anything clean about it. It's all uncleanliness, inordinate, vile affection. And notice what Paul says, mortify that. Cut it off, kill it. But what do we have going on in the religious world today? Over at First Baptist Church, they're not saying kill it. They're saying let it grow. It's love like everybody else's love. Just let it spread. Now, friends, again, if we're going to let the Bible speak, the Bible says, nope, there's nothing loving about it. Vile affections, pathos, causes suffering, causes pain. Paul says later you need to mortify, cut it off, kill it before it gets any worse. And when we go back to 1 Corinthians chapter 6 and verse 9, friends, brethren, it says, or not in verse 9, but in verse 10, they did not get to stay in these states, nor thieves, nor covetous, nor drunkards, nor revilers, nor extortioners shall inherit the kingdom of God, and such were some of you. Guess what about the effeminate? You were effeminate. You're not effeminate any longer. What about the abusers of themselves with mankind? You were abusers of yourselves with mankind. What about now? No, you're not abusers of yourselves with mankind anymore. You cannot be in the kingdom. You cannot be a Christian and continue to be involved in these behaviors, in these ways of thinking, and expect to go to heaven and to inherit the kingdom of God. Now we're running at 9:53. How you doing over there?
You can stop it. Stop the phone lines a little bit.
Oh, the phone number's been up for a while. So, well, friends, as we're letting this roll out, and I think that Dad is going to come on, you're going to kind of pick up on the same subject.
Interview on the news.
All right, we're going to be dealing with an interview on the news. What interview?
Mine, Troy.
Okay, he's going to be discussing his interview with Troy on the Buzz. He's had some time to go back, clip it up. I know on the Buzz segment, there was a lot of talking over each other. And so which is fine with us because we have all this time to go back and clip it up and let you hear what's actually being said. And we can actually give clear identification as to what else is being said. So as we go on, friends, we are still involved in the tent meeting. We are fighting hard for our community so as to bring it back to hopefully a greater realm of peace. That's actually what we're wanting. But the only way that we're going to be able to have this peace is, friends, we have got to establish by authority somewhere, and establishing authority in the Bible, we're going to be able to bring about peace. We want to advertise our Facebook page for the Martinsville Church of Christ. For the caller that called in, you can definitely, I believe you can leave a message here on this Facebook page, and we will receive that message. So if you do that, we can then send you the link to what they were asking about, the 4 gospel accounts, whether they deal specifically with Jews or whether it's Jew and Gentile. But also, as we're involved in our tent TV, the schedule is kind of sporadic. Go to Martinsville Church of Christ on Facebook, like this page, and you will not miss a show. We will post links leading up to the show so that we can properly advertise and so you can find us on here. So we're going to take a quick commercial break, kind of switch some things over, and we're going to come back to discuss, or Dad's going to come back to discuss what happened on the buzz a couple days ago. So stay with us.
Know what the Bible says, but I can tell you one thing right now. I wish I had my pastor with me.
Doug Barber?
Yes.
I do too.
Because he'd let you have it. And he'd let you have it with both barrels. Everything he preaches is strictly the Bible.
See why so many people are angry now. Catch it live nightly on WGSR. Watch talk shows for showtime.
Things about the Church of Christ. But now's your chance to find out for yourself. Starting September the 12th through the 23rd at 7 p.m. each night at the Eden Fairgrounds, you can find out the truth about the Church of Christ. No collections or offerings will ever be taken, and your questions are always welcome. Don't believe the gossip. Only believe the gospel. We hope to see you there.
The views expressed on this program do not necessarily reflect the views of the station, its employees, or ownership.
Thanks for joining me tonight. I'm Johnny Robertson, and we are still live here on What Does the Bible Say? We appreciate you staying with us. Now, we really made a quick switch. That's probably the quickest move we've ever made, and I appreciate Micah for the very good information. And one of the things that I especially appreciate is the fact that he made it so relevant. I mean, when you come on television and you're talking about issues that, you know, people are watching, and you've got the Baptist preacher saying it's over what? He said they've not oversimplified it. It's kind of...
It's overblown.
Overblown. You got the biggest Baptist church. Well, it's really not the biggest Baptist church in Martinsville, Virginia. It's the biggest building. It's uptown on Starling Avenue. They are, I would say, the highbrow Baptists. And their assistant pastor is saying it's overblown. Former assistant pastor is saying it's overblown. Now, you know, I have the diagnostic criteria for the diagnostic manual. What is a diagnostic manual? Well, I actually left mine at home. And as a result of leaving mine at home, it's actually the American Psychiatric Association's manual. Did you realize that the psychiatrists have a manual? They don't just get to pull down diagnosis right out of the, you know, just sitting there and it's Dr. Freud sitting there at the desk. You know, this stuff is put together by an association. They put out their manuals. This is number 4, and I didn't bring mine. And I get on the internet and look, it actually says these criteria are obsolete. You mean to tell me that we're looking at a pedophilia in the 4th manual? I mean, in the 3rd manual, they changed homosexuality and it became obsolete. Now you look at the 4th manual, and the information in the 4th manual now is obsolete. Well, that basically brings me to a statement that Troy actually made in an interview. Now I'm going to do a little homework here, and I just have to apologize because I was really getting with it over there and didn't put up my my own slideshow, and I'll do that right now. And I put my phone numbers up there on that as well, so that you can participate in the broadcast. And you know, it is an honor to get to be with you tonight and to participate in trying to slow down the cultural war that we're dealing with. We have a lot of individuals that don't realize, you know, we could participate in this. It's really not that difficult. As far as the battle is concerned, it's really not that difficult. I mean, in the situation where we are, it's news. Folks actually want to hear an opposition voice. I mean, we had a guy in North Carolina last year. This guy basically said you ought to fence the homosexuals up in an internment camp like they did the Japanese before World War II or when they bombed Pearl Harbor. Man, the news loved that. They played that and played that and played that. Well, so here you are, you're in your local community and you're saying, what can I do about the situation? Well, every news outlet isn't like every other news outlet. There are some news outlets that actually like to put out the news. Well, this is one of them, Star News. They like to hear both sides. Now, there are outlets, liberal outlets that claim to be free speech. Now, I believe Charles is a liberal too, but he believes in free speech. You know what? He really believes in free speech. I'm on here tonight, and I was on his program in a news interview with a homosexual gentleman that has just gotten married to another man. Now, are you telling me, are you watching me and saying tonight, Martinsville, Virginia, and North Carolina, that's the only outlet in the whole United States that will let anyone oppose homosexuality? I just can't believe that. And I absolutely know it's not the case, because I can drive 3.5 hours to Raleigh, North Carolina, and there's another broadcast station down there that I did the same thing on. And I do the same thing on. So it's amazing that we're not participating in this battle. A lot of people in the Church of Christ are in the closet. What does that mean? You don't want to tell people what you believe. Well, if you don't want to stand up against things that are coming down the pike, then you deserve to have to put up with them. If you're not going to be a part of obstructing it, if you're not going to be a part of helping fix it, then why do you even complain? And if one of your children gets caught up in this, who can you blame? I never heard mom and daddy say anything. I never heard them be active. They said that they were opposed to it, but they never did anything. They never did anything about, you know, that's just the way it goes. You can tell your children one thing and then you do another, and your children will see right through you. So here we are tonight on What Does the Bible Say? Second hour, 7th day of a tent meeting in Eden, North Carolina. 7th day, have we been off the air anytime? 8th day of broadcast. We started broadcasting last Sunday, and we've been broadcasting ever since. And we've had a news interview on the Buzz at 4 p.m. on Monday last week. We're supposed to have another interview this week. And these things they're interesting. Individuals are looking at this information as we speak. So here's what I'm saying is extremely important, is the fact that we had the interview. Here's the gentleman that we interviewed. Charles is the owner. He's the host of, I don't know if he's the owner or not. He's the host of the Buzz. I'm in the middle. And Troy here is a gentleman who is a practicing homosexual. He is a individual who's an ex-Marine. I don't know anything about the reality of anything that he says, with the exception that he is claiming that he is now married in June. And I've been on 2 or 3 or 4 times with him before. He actually came out in the Martinsville area last year or 2 years ago, and he wanted to do a show that I was involved in, and he wanted to tell his piece. Well, he actually wanted to come against me. Since then, he's to get a lawyer, because I continued to question him and talk with him and really present his case, and he's gotten enough of it. Well, you see what I'm saying? Now, somebody might say, well, I'm intimidating. Listen, this is not intimidate. This is free speech. He came out and wants to say that this is normal behavior. And when we start putting up the argumentation, guess what? They're running for cover. Now, you might say, well, how'd you do that, Johnny? Well, tonight we can look at this. We can basically present the arguments. Now, I haven't clipped this up. I have actually gone through and I've gotten signatures so that we're able to look at this in real time. And let me just see here if I can find that one. That's not playing. All right, let me just see here just a second. Can't see my time signature on there for some reason. And I don't want to go out of it, but I guess I'm gonna have to. All right, I'm gonna go full screen with it. Let's begin. I just want to show you how you can deal with these individuals. And we really deal with anybody like this. Troy is a human being. I don't have a personal problem with Troy. We've been on several shows together. We used to share this set with another gentleman. There would be three of us on the one side and Charles on the other. The other guy was an atheist. We've had several different individuals on this broadcast. Troy is just one of them. But I can get along in the sense that I can be civil to anybody. You know, if they allow me to be civil, I'm civil with him. We sat there for an hour. But the thing is, here's the question. Can he deal with the situation that arises as a result of his argumentation? Now, I'm going to move you to about 7 minutes here when this all starts. And I want to let you listen to kind of how this goes. Now, I think I'll set it up a little bit. We're just beginning, and there was a show the day before. The show the day before had a very, very well-known personality to Martinsville and Henry County. She's an individual who took down an individual who was in another television broadcast station. She worked for the station. This guy is in the position of, I don't know, he's reporting or whatever. His name's Bill White over in Martinsville. And it just was extremely well known. She had a high-profile lawyer that was used by one of the women that Bill Clinton was involved in. When he was president, this lady named Ramona, she used that same lawyer, and it was just a big, big deal. Charles ends up on Oprah, and I want to say Geraldo, but it's not. Maury Povich. And, you know, this is just really big, high-profile coverage. Well, from time to time, Charles checks in with these individuals. And so he checked in with her the day before. And so he begins the program by mentioning her. Now, take a listen.
Sit down with mom. The fact that she raised her kids, I'm interested in that. That means she's got some kind of heart, you know, and realization that, I mean, how many people just let their kids go? I mean, I'm saying that acted like she did.
Yeah.
With Bill White. Usually a lot of them, when they throw their life away, they throw everything.
Did you remember Ramona the other day?
I've heard about it.
Heard about it. What did you hear about?
The scandal, who's sleeping who and all that.
Right.
Do
you think she has a slutty image?
I mean, like I said, I didn't pay that much attention to it. I mean, it wouldn't.
I don't look at her that way.
Well, she took off with her from her husband with Bill White.
Yeah.
I don't think I ever, you know, that was before I came here, but I would be interested if there is a slutty image for Troy. I mean, when you start actually saying intolerant.
Wait a minute, I was talking about you said he's a slut?
No, I'm saying.
I see a slutty image. Why would he ask that question?
Yeah, what would be a slutty image if we're being tolerant today? Because I mean, we're really tolerating everything.
Okay.
Now, you know, my question is this is a precise question. And you heard me follow up with, because we're being tolerant. Now, folks, this is where we are today. Here's an individual who basically wants to be tolerated, and we're sitting here talking about a woman who Charles says that some people see her slutty. And he wants to know if Troy sees her slutty. Now, Troy's already said he heard about her loose, sleeping with who's who, and all that kind of stuff. I don't really get the position that he's in. Here's a guy who is just out there totally against what any standard, I mean, what standard are we going to go by? Because if we're going to go by the standard of behavior in the United States, man, the internet is allowing all kinds of stuff. But so that's not our standard. Surely he's not going to go with that standard. You can see any kind of behavior on the internet, literally anything on the internet, and it's tolerated in the United States. So that can't be our standard. Now, I heard a person who's on the city council who was goes to Jackie Poe's church. He was doing an interview with Charles, and he was telling Charles the interview had to do with the city buying the cable company. You know, one of the cable companies went out of business before Comcast came here, and the city was thinking about buying it. And Charles was like, nah, you mean the city's going to be involved in piping porn into everybody's living room? And this guy, he's a church member at Mercy Crossing, and he's like, well, everybody's already doing it. So the city's going to be involved in that. They're going to be promoting the porn. They're going to be selling it. See, that's just because everybody's doing it. And so that's the only standard that he really has. Everybody is sleeping around, men with men, and marrying men now. So he turns around and he looks at Ramona, And he kind of turns his nose up, and Charles is saying a lot of people say that she's slutty. And so I asked Troy, just simply, Troy, where do you get off saying anybody is slutty? What standard do you use if we're using the tolerance meter? Now, folks, I did that on purpose. I set this up exactly the way I want to set it up because this is the argument today. And you just watch him start flailing around and backpedaling, and both he and Charles end up trying to change the whole thing around. Now, I'm setting this up. They try to turn it around and make the question totally different. They don't want to talk about tolerance and happiness. They want to end up, anything that I say, they want to try to frame it differently, because when I say that it's about tolerance and happiness, you know I'm headed somewhere. Because it isn't fair for Troy to be the only one who gets to be happy. I mean, he's talking about Ramona. Maybe she was happy back there when she was running around with Bill White. I mean, she said some pretty wild things. Bill White said some really wild things in those days about Ramona. Left his wife, took up Ramona. They were all over television, just all kinds of stuff. Now he's saying, well, I heard about her, and he's not giving her a plug. I don't know why he didn't say, well, if it makes her happy. But see, I know these people. I know exactly how they think. And I know how Charles thinks too. I know that Charles can't follow this argument, because it is not fair for one segment who is now getting to be happy to be the only one that gets to be happy, when we had to change the laws of our entire nation's history in order to make him happy. And that's really all it is. It's a law change. Well, I don't know that Ramona was breaking any law. Now, it used to be her and Bill, they would have been put in jail for their behavior. See, the laws changed. Well, he's still hanging on to the old-timey laws over there where, people would have said that she's a slut. But he wants to get to be married to another man. And why? Tolerance makes him happy. Well, that just doesn't work. We had another caller. They were trying to frame the question, because see, when I talk about them being happy, I'm headed to the next group of people that are waiting in the wings. This is kind of like the Late Show or the green room at one of these talk shows. You got one group come in, and then you got somebody else in the green room waiting to get their day. There's another group that's waiting to get their day. We've got the transgenders now. They've got their day, except in North Carolina. And Troy and them already got their day. They're married. They claim it's marriage. The transgenders have going in the bathrooms they want to. And we got other individuals, as we showed on our beginning slide. We have the pedophiles. They're waiting in the wings. Diagnostic criteria 302.2, pedophilia. And guess what? I didn't even realize it, but my number 4 manual they're claiming that it's obsolete. They have some more information. Well, what's that information going to be? I guarantee it's going to be a change, a shift that makes it more permissible for this crowd of individuals. Why? Because see, the doctors in this particular field, they don't base their diagnosis on anything scientific. It's data. It's accumulated data. The more people's minds change, let me put it this way, it's called values. Used to be in the United States, we valued a particular kind of relationship. And as you go against those values, it begins to distress you. It begins to cause trouble for you. And ultimately, it causes such a situation that these folk in this community said, you know what? This isn't proper. Well, as people's values change, then it doesn't bother you anymore, and it doesn't bother the social network that you're in. It doesn't disturb anybody at work, and all of a sudden, it's not a problem. See how values changing? You see that preacher that Micah used, that assistant pastor? His values are completely gone. He is offering beer to get people into a Bible study, and he's telling Micah that all of the biz about homosexuality is overblown. I wonder if this guy doesn't have some friends that are in the homosexual community that he's not wanting to be offensive to, or he himself doesn't have a proper biblical ideology about the sin in the first place. It's just one of the two. The guy he's not convicted or converted to what the Bible says, or he's got people that he's trying to harbor, or he's trying to not to offend. He may have a subset that he's involved with, and he doesn't want to bother them. Well, guess what? Same thing is happening over here. And we want you to be able to do battle with this kind of activity. And so tonight, this is right where we are. I've set up the scene for being happy. Now, when I said tolerance and being happy, that's exactly where I wanted to go. I wanted to make sure that everybody heard. Let me just make sure that everybody is hearing me set up this argument. 8 minutes. Let me just make sure I see this. 8 minutes and 23 seconds. Let me back up again. Let's do it just a little bit more.
Yeah, the scandal, who sleeping with who and all that.
Right.
Do you think she has a slutty image?
I mean, like I said, I didn't pay that much attention to it. I mean, it wouldn't.
I don't look at her that way.
When she took off from her husband with Bill White,
yeah.
I don't think I ever, and that was before I came here, but I would be interested if there is a slutty image. Before. I mean, when you start actually saying entitlement.
Wait a minute, you said he's a slut?
See a slutty image. Why would he ask that?
Yeah, what would be a slutty image if we're being tolerant today? Because we're really tolerating that.
Okay. No, you're going back to morals and things like that.
Tolerance, yeah, just the basic tolerance. I mean, let's just throw morals out the window and say we don't even have a word moral anymore, so we're going to tolerate. How far are we going to tolerate now?
Right. And yeah, that's kind of where you draw the line, isn't it?
Well, that is the issue. I mean, tolerance is really, it has opened the door for everything.
Okay.
And you don't even have to discuss.
Do you see anything good in that, or do you see all bad?
I say that I see that it's taking us just down a total decline. I mean, that's one of the reasons I brought the psychiatric manual.
Yeah.
Okay. So I'm saying tolerance is the issue. Charles has got it. He's grasped on it. He doesn't have a problem with it at this point. He's just letting me point out my situation there. Now I'm going to move to 10 minutes and 50 seconds. That's just like 2 minutes away. And let's watch the subject. Let's watch the argument change. What I'm going to do is I'm setting up that he wants us to be tolerant with him. Doesn't care too much about Ramona's situation, but as long as we tolerate him, and we're going to get really into it because he's going to own my argument. He is going to own my particular argument, and then he's going to start amending it, and then he's going to try to get away from it. Watch as we progress.
And you want to live with one person?
Yeah, I want to live with one person. I refuse to spend the rest of my life with it. And I didn't do it for anybody's morals, anybody's beliefs, or religion. It's for me and me only. This is what makes me happy.
There it is. I told you it was coming. I introduced this argument at 8 minutes and 6 seconds. He just kind of sit there. Charles grasped it, got a hold to it. We talked around it, and Troy owns it. I didn't do it for anybody's morals. And see, these guys, people wearing these t-shirts all the time. Nobody judges me but God. We told y'all this stuff about not judging was going to backfire on you. It started out with, well, you're not supposed to judge. And we were trying to tell people in denominations that we could make a judgment based upon what the Bible says about them being in a church that's not authorized, that you have to have the Bible's authorization for the things they do in worship, who's preaching, the kind of money situation, the giving, all of that. And they would come back, well, you're not supposed to judge. Now, Charles Barkley got a hold of that real quick. Charles Barkley was doing an interview and he said, Republicans are the most hypocritical group out there. Why? Bible says don't judge, and they're judging all these homosexuals. Now the homosexuals, everybody really, saw a guy up in Danville the other day, yesterday, he had a shirt on, big letters, nobody judges me but God. Guarantee you that's a homosexual, it's a catchphrase. That's what they're saying these days. Nobody judges me but God. Well, really everybody's saying it. I've heard it out of all kinds of people. Well, okay, here we are. It makes him happy. I'm so thrilled that he owned it because he's going to leave it in just a minute because that, why does just Troy subset the homosexual community? Why are we stopping there? Why are they the only ones who get to be happy? Continue.
Gotcha.
So it doesn't matter. It doesn't matter. In the end, if I was to go on that religious road or whatever, in the end, when I go to be judged, I'm going for myself. Nobody else can speak for me being judged.
Right.
Only one person I got to answer to if that is the true question. It's only one person I need to answer to, and that's God. Nobody, so why does anybody even worry about what I'm doing? This is for me. It's not for anybody to talk about or get all upset about or worry about. It's more right or it's more wrong or whatever. It's not their ground. It's not even their business.
let's take the Bible out of it. Let's just say we don't have a Bible. Let's take morals out of it. His basic mantra right now is what makes me happy. Now, where are we going with that, Charles? Who else gets to say what makes me happy?
Okay, now Charles is thinking it over. We got Troy over here. All he's thinking about is his lifestyle choice here, and he doesn't want to have anybody speaking on it. Nobody has the right to get into the realm of morals. He says, I'm happy. And I say, fine, throw out the Bible, throw out the morals, and we'll argue on common sense, everyday common sense. Now, Charles got it in his court, happy. And I say, who else gets to be happy? Now, if you don't be careful, you're going to open yourself up. Again, we set this up, knew exactly where we're going. They're not going to be happy. I guarantee you they're not going to be happy. And see, when you're not happy with your argument, here's what you do. You start framing it differently. And when you do that, when you frame it differently, then you accuse me of changing it. And then when I won't let you accuse me any longer, you go la 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 la. But in this particular instance, they say Johnny, 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 Johnny. We frame the argument. We let it come right out of his mouth. I introduced what's going on in the world today. Tolerance. Everybody's tolerating everybody. You can't even say Islamic terrorists anymore. You got to, you have to, you just can't. You got to be more tolerant than that. Well, what are they? They're Indian terrorists. No, they're not Indian. Well, see, that's too broad. Indians can be terrorists. Pakistanis can be terrorists, but they're Islamic. You see, if you don't put Islamic in there, well, we don't want to paint a broad brush on all Islam. You're not painting a broad brush on all Islam when you say that they're Islamic terrorists. No, any more than you're painting a broad brush when you talk about the folks over in Kansas, the Baptists over in Kansas. You remember? What's that? Yeah, the Phelps. I'm talking about what kind of Topeka, Kansas. I can't remember what that particular Baptist church is called. But what? Say it one more time. Westboro Baptist Church. Now, that's too broad, Johnny. You don't need to say Baptist. You know, all Baptists are not homophobic. Well, I don't know that they're homophobic. I mean, and besides that, I'm not painting a broad. Micah was talking about the First Baptist tonight. That's intolerant. You shouldn't have said Baptist. You should have said those people that assemble in that building on Starling Avenue. No, that's not how it works. You don't do that when you say somebody has salmonella poisoning. Some restaurant on Commonwealth has salmonella poisoning. You want to know exactly which one. And it's intolerant to not be specific. You ought to specify. See, folks, you just can't make some people happy. So I said tolerant, they said happy. I was happy that they said happy because that's what I wanted to happen from tolerance. You see, people are wanting to be happy doing all kinds of stuff. Now, can we examine this just a minute? How come prostitutes don't get to be happy? Now, I'm not for prostitution, but I'm just asking the question. Why is it that these women who want to sell themselves and make lots of money and make themselves happy like that our government is so intolerant and won't let them do that? Why is it that smokers cannot stay in the room anymore? I mean, really? I'm not for smoking either, but I'm just making the argument here. If we're talking about being happy, man, these smokers, have you seen folks that smoke in the wintertime? I'm telling you, there's some bad weather in Virginia, and I see folks standing out in it. I'm talking about snow, drizzle, rain, sleet, anything you can imagine. There are people standing outside smoking. Why in the world don't they get in the shelter? It's against the law. Intolerance to smokers. Well, we're about to make the argument why. And Troy knows how it works. He just didn't think of it quick enough because see, he isn't you. Most of these folk are not everyday people. They're not used to having to argue. You know why? Because people like us don't say anything anymore. We're just saying, well, maybe these folk will go away if we just be quiet. Oh, that's working well, isn't it? What you're doing is reversing things. They come out of the closet and you're going in. Well, let's stay in the closet. Maybe they'll disappear. What's going to happen is you will disappear. Your lifestyle is going to disappear around you while you do nothing. And it's not really that difficult. Troy does not want the public square with the arguments that he's making. Take a listen.
Everybody does. Let's say we don't have a Bible. I'm fine with that. We'll just take the Bible out and now we're going to be happy.
Maybe he says he doesn't want the Bible.
Fine. I said fine. Fine. So we now are ruled about what makes us happy. Now, Charles, we all can sit here and say that we're done with the Bible. It's caused all these issues, but I don't think anybody who's listening to this show today will say what makes us happy, because man, what makes the next person happy is going to be way up
Now,
the scale.
when you go to what restaurant are you at?
One man's poison is another man's. How does that go? Can you look up that for me, Micah? Because this is really, when we get down to it. Now, Charles, you know, sometimes Charles, I'm not saying Charles is slow. I'm just saying he's not paying attention. He's the host. He's got to keep the show going. So I'm making a very clear, established premise. What makes Troy happy may not be enough for the next person. And so Charles is going to have to deal with the next person sooner or later. Well, Charles is not, he's trying to figure out what to say next, because we don't let Johnny take over the show.
One man's poison is another man's cure.
Okay, one man's poison is another man's cure. Now, see how weird that's, you know, these old sayings get to be old sayings because they're true. Oh, it's a poison. Homosexuality is poison. No, it's his cure. Can't make him happy unless it's that way. Now, he claims he's going to stay married to one guy. Not going to happen. You look at the statistics for individuals in this particular lifestyle that stay monogamous. That's not going to happen. He's going to be fooling around. This guy is too risque. He prides himself in being a stripper. You ought to see the way he dresses up. Just, this guy is not going to stay married. You see, this lifestyle actually, it trends on getting more and more. It is likened to, in some of the older psychiatric work, it's likened to a drug. And do you know that individuals who are pedophiles and they have a higher recidiv rate than young girls? We're talking about a pedophile, somebody who's looking at, it's a man who's 16 years or older, who's looking down at adolescent children. If he prefers girls, it's possible that he may do that once and never do it again. But the possibility of not repeating it if you prefer boys is basically not going to happen. That's what the psychiatrists say. So what does that tell you? It's a homosexual behavior. Now, see, both of them, it just drives them crazy when the data is presented. But, you know, I get crazy too, because these folk keep changing the data. You know why? Because they're getting pressure. Nobody wants pedophilia to be a homosexual activity. Now, I know that all pedophiles are not involved with boys. I know that all men pedophiles are not involved with same sex. Some of them actually are preying on young girls. But it is the case that the Psychiatric Association says if a man, a 16-year-old man, 16-year-old, the age for pedophilia for you to be guilty is you have to be 16 looking down. So if you're 16 and you choose a boy, the chances of you doing it again, it's just out of sight. So it is basically being pointed out as homosexual behavior. So what I'm basically doing is I'm setting this up. I'm setting up for Charles. Now, what's he going to do? I just want you to watch what he does. It's not particularly in the argument.
Most of the time, right now, I'm eat at Starbucks.
Where do you eat, Johnny?
When they go eat, they will make some happy.
Yeah. I eat what I can. You know.
I mean, a lot of people's thinking is what makes them happy.
Well, I know that.
The level of this, it's not just what makes me happy. It's
okay, here we go. I told you when you get an argument, and he knows where I'm going, so he's fixing to amend. At first, it was fine. What makes me happy, man? Tolerance. I started out with tolerance. He gets happy. Charles says it's all happy. We're all going good. But now he sees where we're going. We're going to put happiness on trial. Now, have you ever thought about putting happiness on trial? Do you know when you put happiness on trial, you know what you do? You actually put the Declaration of Independence on trial. Do you realize that? I don't think people really actually get it, where all of this comes from. Let me just, here's the way I should do this. Hold on. When you talk about happiness and you start running these questions, you start realizing, you know what? This is not just Troy's happiness. This is all of our happiness. You just put the Declaration of Independence on trial. Why is that? The Declaration of Independence, it involves all of us being in the pursuit of happiness. Do you not realize that? We are all created equal and we have unalienable rights by our Creator. And one of those is the pursuit of happiness. Yay! In America, see, this is going to be our downfall right here. Our downfall is going to be our own declaration that everybody can be happy. Do you realize any statement has to be qualified? Every statement has to be qualified. You cannot just have, there's not a Bible verse that does not have to be qualified. That's why people try to say, well, you can make the Bible contradict itself. No. The Bible has statements in it, and each one of them has to be qualified by everything else in it. That's why we have constitutional lawyers. They study it, and they try to help us to realize, listen, you can't just say, broad stroke, everybody gets to be happy. Well, the Declaration of Independence says we do. And see, these guys are buying into it. They think that everybody gets to be happy. We're promised the pursuit of happiness and no restraint in the United States. No, 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 no. That is not the case. So Troy actually realizes that I'm about to restrain him. I'm about to argue that he needs to be restrained. Listen to what he does. This guy, he shifts. Now, I would have expected Charles to realize the man shifted, but he doesn't. What they're going to do is they're fixing to change the argument right in midstream, and then I'm going to catch them. And when I start catching them, they're going to try to say that I changed everything. And then when I say they did it, la, 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 I don't want to hear you. This is how it's fixing to go.
As long as it's not hurting anyone else, why should it matter?
It was a verse.
So we just changed it.
I know, that's right. That's a good question.
I thought him is what happened.
No, it's not. It's just
you get to amend your position as I catch you. Now I'm not. I'll catch you on that too.
I get you. You catch me whatever you want to catch.
See, that's exactly what's happening.
I read it. When did you catch it?
I started out with a simple argument. It makes me happy. Okay, I started working on that. And that argument doesn't fit anymore because we all know what makes him happy isn't what's going to make the next deviant happy. They're going to deviate. Now, he can take...
You're calling him a deviant?
I'm saying he's deviated from what we have actually been doing.
All the tapes, I've said it before, the whole thing. What makes me happy as long as it doesn't hurt anybody else. I've always said that.
You know, he said, pull up the tape. Okay. You know what? I take the challenge. Let's pull up the tape on Troy. We actually have, I think I have 77 tapes, 77 different clips on Troy, but I'm just going to use one, I hope, that I have lined up here. Let's see if I can get this to go in with this one, and we'll just cue up Troy on Troy. Everybody knows what Troy says. Everybody's heard him say, especially, let's see, 13:17. Let me keep my time signature here. Let's see what Troy says. Does he say that he's always said, 13:17, he's always said, just as long as it doesn't hurt anybody? Is that really what he said? Take a listen.
I'm about to hear Troy argue against a psychiatrist in the University of Toronto who's now saying the same thing that Troy said about his homosexuality.
Okay.
Cannot choose.
You ready? You ready for this? Okay. This is common sense going from somebody, a human, okay? Listen to this real carefully. He keeps trying to compare us to animals or whatever, having sex with animals. When an animal can tell me yes or no, he wants to have sex with me, then we'll say it's morally right. Until
Okay. We had introduced bestiality in some of this. Micah talked about it tonight, somebody having sex with an animal. And so he said, we've said that this is coming next. And so he said, well, you're trying to class me with an animal. As long as when an animal can say yes, then it will be yes or no, it will be morally wrong. Now, wait a minute. So are you saying that it's not morally? Let's listen to that again, because little children can say yes and no. They can be groomed. These priests were getting many of these children to the point where they weren't objecting. And that's exactly what pedophiles do. They set up a scenario. Uncle Joe, he sets up a scenario often where he grooms the child, and our school system's doing the same thing, unknowingly, maybe. But our school system is basically introducing our children to all of these sexual images and, you know, things that used to would just freak a child out. Now they're like, well, we saw that in second grade. What? Yeah, well, I mean, we're used to seeing, they actually have to know, they have to be able to verbalize different body parts of the opposite sex. That's why my kids are not in the public school system. And when they were in the public school system, they had to announce back in the day that they were having sex education, and you could take them, you could keep them home. So now they're not horrified. They're not horrified. Well, you see, they're saying, well, this stuff's going to happen, so you should be able to at least get them to recognize stuff so they don't get hurt. That's like a bomb maker. Well, kids are going to make a bomb, so you might as well tell them how the bomb is made so they don't blow themselves up. Is that really, is that really how we want to work this thing? How about we just resist bomb making? How about we resist this kind of behavior? Well, we're not going to resist it. It's going to happen. Well, Are you sure? Is there no other obstruction? There's no other way to handle this? And so let's listen to Troy again about this business, about what makes a thing morally wrong and right.
Listen to this real carefully. You keep trying to compare us to animals or whatever, having sex with animals. When an animal can tell me yes or no, he wants to have sex with me, then we'll say it's morally right.
Okay. Okay, I got that. If an animal could say yes or no, it would be morally right to have sex with an animal. Can a child say yes or no? Well, absolutely. There are when we talk about pedophilia, we're talking about 16, and then you have to go down, and the person has to be a certain age, and it gets kind of difficult sometimes to figure which one of these manuals you're going to use. So they basically say whatever the law says. Well, you can't trust the law. We've just seen this because the law used to say you couldn't marry a man. A man can't marry a man. Well, now Troy's married to a man. That's not his man. This is Larry Serber. He's an atheist, and he's reason we're in this as much as anybody else. He says there is no God. So if there is no God, the Declaration of Independence is God. Everything makes anybody happy. And man, I'm telling you, this guy got pretty happy over here. He got so happy that his wife got really upset with him about saying what he wished that he could do. Oh man, it's just Pandora's box here that we're opening up. And what in the world is Troy? What is he trying to make out of that?
632. If I slip a little bit, so
you'll change it again before
we're not. That's the whole thing. If I slip a little bit.
But the simple argument, it makes me happy. Okay, I started working on that. And that argument doesn't fit anymore because we all know what makes him happy isn't what's going to make the next deviant happy. They're going to deviate. Now, he can take
you're calling him a deviant?
I'm saying he's deviated from what we have actually been doing.
The tapes, I've said it before, the whole thing. What makes me happy as long as it doesn't hurt anybody else. I've always said that.
Now, it hurts an animal. He's saying it hurts an animal because an animal cannot consent. Now, if an animal could consent and say yes or no, you hurt him, it would be morally right. If the animal could consent, there would be nothing wrong with it because the animal is saying it doesn't hurt. Well, then what about pedophilia? I'm just saying, listen, folks, there is plenty. Are you ready for the plenty? There is plenty of evidence in the psychiatric community. Oh, well, excuse me. Dr. Kinsey wasn't a doctor of psychiatry. His main poison that ended up being his cure, he studied wasp. I don't really know how a guy goes from studying wasp to actually stimulating in a sexual way infants, but he did it. And he is the guru of all gurus. Charles promotes him. Larry Serber promoted him. And, when Charles first started asking me about it, it was way back there. He asked me if I ever heard of Kinsey. Sure, I've heard of Kinsey. He is a pedophile, pervert. I convinced Larry that he was a pervert, and then Larry switched back on me and accused me of lying. But here's his book, Human Sexuality of Male. It's the age of individuals that Dr. Kinsey supposedly is chronicling that are 5 months old, 11 months old, 2 years old, 2.5 years old, 4 years old, 4 years old, 4 years old, 7 years old, 8 years old, 9 years old, 10 years old. Well, what are we doing with these 5-month-olds? Well, the chart says number of orgasms. What? Who in the world is involved with this kind of activity? Well, Dr. Kinsey. And the pedophiles that he is chronicling, you mean he wasn't turning them into the police? No. He was basically telling them what to do and how to do it. He talks about the time involved, 38 minutes, 1 hour, 9 minutes, 65 minutes, 2 minutes, 5 minutes, 10 hours, 24 hours. A 4-year-old for 24 hours? Are you kidding me? Yeah, he's a pedophile. No, he's a doctor. No, he's a pedophile. Well, it makes him happy. And, we're discussing, does it hurt? Well, who in the world are we going to ask these questions? Because we can see that our psychiatric community has lost its mind. The WASP studying community that's gone into sexuality has lost its mind. The atheists have lost their mind. The talk show host has lost his mind. Now, Charles is supposed to be a rational individual who's a news gatherer. He has yet to read this book or have a look at it. And I've been pulling this book out, I don't know how long. Now, I'm going to let you see Larry Serber. watch Larry Serber switch on me. Let me see if I can recall where Larry is. He's on this other one. Let me go back to it. Let's see. Larry Serber, here he is. Now he's passed, and this was a discussion after he had said to me, admitted that Kinsey was a pedophile. Take a listen to his backtracking.
Because he was telling me some things that were not true. And I started sort of being critical of kids. He said, well, he made these little boys masturbate for 12 hours or so. That was not true. That was just crazy stuff. That woman up at Lynchburg and followed.
Oh, that's some crazy stuff up there at Lynchburg, woman at Lynchburg. And Charles is saying, right. Where's the investigative reporter? Right. You know, I get to pick back when they do their things, when they change arguments right in front of you, and when they don't push back. This guy is saying that Judith Reisman up at Lynchburg is the reason why we have this book called The Male Human Sexuality that completely revolutionized the homosexual community. Is he trying to tell us that this is the reason why that I said what I said about Kinsey? This book is Kinsey's own research and chronicles of other people's research. Look at this. Here is, I don't remember what table it is. It's 318. It ends up being 318 chronicled events. I'm sitting here thinking about this. It is just unbelievable that there is a book about human sexuality in which this guy was allowed to put forth the fact that he chronicled himself and other individuals that were involved with 318 different people in population. The population, how many people in population? We've got our lower third down there, but at the bottom down here it says 318. Cases not reaching climax. Well, what are we talking about here? 2-month-old, 3-month-old, 4-month-old, 5-month-old, 8-month-old, 9-month-old, 10-month-old, 11-month-old, 12-month-old, up to 1 year, up to 2 years, up to 3 years, up to 4 years, up to 5 years, up to 6 years, up to 7 years, up to 8 years, up to 9 years, up to 10 years. Finally, he gets up to a 15-year-old. You know, I just can't even believe that the United States just didn't. It's like the Titanic sinking here, and nobody said anything. Kinsey started sending his books out for free. Started sending out to the medical community for free. Wow, this guy that studied WASP, have you heard about him? Man, if the internet was around, he would have I think he would have probably gotten himself in trouble. Because see, it was so undercover. He sent it out to the law enforcement agencies for free. Next thing you know, they're looking at this and they're like, whoa, this is data. No, this is breaking the law. No, this is data. This guy, have you seen this guy that studies WASP? This dude, he's gotten way over into another field. Well, what's he doing in this field? Is he qualified? No. Does he know how to bring together statistics? No. So, it just amazes me that these folks get away with making these arguments. John, what does the Bible say?
Yeah, all right, Johnny. One thing that's becoming apparent to me in watching you put out these statistics from these books are the individuals, the children who were in this process or experiment or whatever you want to call it. They did not have parental authority or guidance, or they must have been children that were in institutions.
No.
How did he have access to these children to do this?
Sadly, it's not the case. It is not the case that they were just institutionalized or they were left, to themselves. Some of these are actually chronicled by individuals that are caregivers. And that's where Judith Reisman comes in. This woman has spent her life investigating this, and it's just simply amazing what ends up coming out. Some of these are roving pedophiles that are in fact snatching children, but some of it, unbelievably, is coming right from homes, and Kinsey was telling them exactly how to give him the research. And
if that were found out today by the parents were involved in something like that, they would be arrested.
Well, you know what?
Here's for much less, for pictures of less.
Well, here's where we are. Somebody help me here. And y'all might not be able to help me, but I'm pretty sure that I'm right here. Indiana University is where the Kinsey Institute is. And the government of the United States cannot get in to see what's in the Kinsey Institute. Now, is that not ridiculous? We know that there are pictures of pedophilia. There is research about pedophilia. There are films about pedophilia. Kinsey himself involved in all this kind of stuff. And somehow or other, our government does not have the wherewithal to get inside and get the evidence, because men like Rockefeller and folks of that notoriety were actually giving money, the Rockefeller Institute giving money to the Kinsey Institute. And now we know that this was simply a sex organization gone crazy. But for some reason, we can't see the Kinsey Institute. It's too sacred and hallowed.
Well, I'm sure that the Freedom of Information Act.
No, you're wrong.
Yeah, I can't.
No, I've already been through this. I've been through this top to bottom. Judith Reisman was Ronald Reagan's czar. Her job was, she was the same guy that Barack Obama just had for his attorney general. She was attorney general for the juvenile district. He gave her a $600,000 budget and set her to work. And she ended up having Chester the molester. You remember, I'm not saying that you remember the pictures, but everybody in our age remembers that one of Playboy's Penthouse or Hustler One had this cartoon called Chester Molester. She had the artist and that person in prison. But she was not able to get into the Kinsey Institute. Freedom of Information Act, nothing is breaking the Kinsey Institute open.
Well, it is amazing, and it reminds me of Nazi Germany.
Absolutely.
Thank
you. Okay, thank you for your call. Is that the only person that's awake out there tonight? I know we are at a different time zone. What time is it?
11.
Well, folks, that's just amazing. I'm satisfied that we have a lot of information out to put on the internet, and we have another 40 minutes, 30 minutes of that broadcast that I was showing you, and we will look at it more. It gets amazing as Troy begins to conceptualize in his mind that there is a psychiatric association that has put together these books. And he makes this astounding statement. Why do they keep changing the book? And then he said, they didn't consult me when they put that in there, really. The Psychiatric Association has to consult Troy in order for us to have a Psychiatric Association manual. Well, I don't know who they've been consulting, but they change it every time you turn around. And pedophilia has gotten into a position where it's next in line. It's no longer looked at the way it used to be, in a horrifying way. Thanks for watching us. I know that Micah thanks you. Okay, well, he said it was pushing 11. I'm so glad that it's not right at 11, because I want you to hear Troy actually say. Let's move right quick. And as we did a moment ago, we set this up. You know, it's not that difficult. I'm going to go to 15 minutes and 19 seconds, and let's let Troy start to realize how things are.
Two separate issues. I argue and catch y'all, and then y'all bring in another argument to say, Johnny, you're trying to catch me. Johnny, you're trying to catch me, and I've done.
I told you. You see, when I catch them, they try to reframe it. They started reframing the argument and saying, well, Johnny, pedophilia is a different thing altogether. No, we started out on what makes people happy. This makes him happy. Having sex with young kids makes pedophiles happy. Oh, no, that's a different argument. Age is different than what we're talking about. Oh, really? Well, let's just move ahead right quick to 2740, and let's see what Troy says about age. 2740.
That's all that counts. We're both legal.
Right. You're not married. You're not married to a 16-year-old. You're not married to a 16-year-old.
We're both legal. That's all. We're both legal.
Right. But why can't you give it?
The person is at least age 16 years and at least 5 years older than the child or the children. So it can be a 20-year-old with the person that's less than 5 years. That's 5 years younger than them. You don't get to say that it's a crusty old man, you know, that's looking at little bitty children. This is the American Psychiatric Association's definition of what pedophilia is.
Right. But Johnny, I think it's a cheap shot.
Why not?
To to compare his homosexuality and him be getting married. How old is your partner?
I don't care. He's younger now. We're both 21 plus.
21 plus.
Why don't you go ahead and tell me?
That's all that counts. We're both legal.
Right. You're not married. You're not married to a 16-year-old. You're not married to a 16-year-old.
No, we're both legal. That's all that counts. We're both legal.
Right. But why can't you give me his age?
I don't need to give his age. Our age does not matter.
Age does not matter. Well, how did we get to that point? Because you see, they are saying that everything, I've reframed everything. You see, if you keep pressing these folks, they end up falling right at your feet. Oh, a moment ago, it was Johnny, Johnny, Johnny. You've changed it to an issue about age. And then he turns around and says, when you start pressing to find out how old his partner is, and did Micah tell you? I loved it when Micah brought this out. Older homosexuals prey on younger men. And he knows that the guy he's involved with is much younger, and he doesn't want to tell it. Doesn't matter. Well, it's legal. Well, what happens when we get to the point where the DSM changes things to the degree that this is now legal? What are we going to do then? Let's look at the diagnostic criteria for 302.2. You remember this. Go and look it up on the internet. Study it. 302.2, the pedophile. What is the pedophile's diagnosis? Well, let me drop down here because we're going to run out of time. Now, notice this. It says this criteria is obsolete. Well, I have the DSM-4. I thought, usually it's 3 strikes and you're out. You stop changing stuff at 3. Well, these folks have 4, and now they must be into another area. How do you look at these individuals over a period of at least 6 months? Recurrent, intense, sexual arousing fantasies, sexual urges or behaviors involving sexual activity with the prepubescent child or children, generally aged 13 or younger. Now here's when you start treating it. The fantasies and the sexual urges or behaviors cause clinically significant distress or impairment in social, occupational, or other important areas of function. Well, what if these fantasies, sexual urges, or behaviors don't cause clinically significant distress? Who's in the clinic? Well, Alfred Kinsey's in. Hello. I'm the WASP specialist who has turned into doing gathering data on stimulating 1 and 2 month old babies. I'm here to help you. What's your question? Well, doc, I'm going through these difficulty in life, or not difficulty, I'm going through these changes in life, and I'm just wanting to know if this is clinically significant that this person is thinking about looking at persons lower than 13 years old as in a way that they shouldn't. Well, Dr. Kinsey would say, go ahead. Why? Makes you happy. You know what Dr. Kinsey's book was about? He was trying to prove that we are, in fact, sexual animals. And as sexual animals, you simply fulfill yourself. That's what we were designed for. The guy don't believe in God. The evolutionists don't believe in God. We're just evolving. How do we know that we're not evolving into what we will one day be? Everybody will be a pedophile. That's what Kinsey was headed for. 318 different cases, and he wasn't arrested. I just don't have much confidence in our government to be able to stabilize us. You know why? The Declaration of Independence says the pursuit of happiness. My friends, can we all pursue happiness? Somebody's got to get the thinking cap on. The adults need to get into the room. Something needs to happen here. I know the First Baptist Church in Martinsville, they've run amok. They're not going to be able to help us. I appreciate Mr. Campbell. What's his first name? Lawrence Campbell over at Bible Way standing up on the phone and saying that homosexuality is a sin. I mean, where are all of these religious people? Do you realize in Virginia that we have a representative in the government in Washington D.C.? That representative listens to 720,000 individuals in our district. If we could get enough individuals to make a fuss, they have to vote against this stuff. Right now, nobody's making a fuss. Preacher's not making a fuss. Nobody's making a fuss. But members of the Church of Christ are making a fuss in Virginia and in North Carolina. Where's everybody else? Why aren't y'all out there making a fuss? Now, I give it. Some guys are putting stuff out on their marquees. But, the marquee that's just the obvious place. You're not even off your own property. We got to take this fight off of our property to the streets, to the marketplace, to Mars Hill, like Paul did. It can be done. And if you don't know how to do it, go to our YouTube, Bible Says TV. And you just go ahead and tune in to our broadcast that's going on, or you can tune into one of our archive broadcasts, Bible Says TV on YouTube. We have covered this, and if you don't get enough information, you can simply get on Facebook, on my Facebook, on the Martinsville Church of Christ Facebook, and ask for material. Man, we have years. I interviewed Judith Riesman, Ronald Reagan czar, juvenile justice system. She was the head of juvenile justice system in Ronald Reagan's time frame before the pharmaceutical company shut them down. I have an interview with her, a lot of information, books that are available. We can fight this fight. We can push back. Get out of the closet. Folks, it's time to do something. And the best way to do it is using your Bible and your God-given brain and some courage that comes from a backbone. God bless you. Always ask hard. What does the Bible say?
Wild things about the Church of Christ. But now's your chance to find out for yourself. Starting September the 12th through the 23rd at 7 p.m. each night at the Eden Fairgrounds.